hello, and welcome to another edition of Calu Connections. I'm your host, Gary Smith, and once again, like I do at the start of every show, like to extend the goodwill. Hope everybody's doing well in this quarantine time. The weather's getting nicer, and so at least we have that going for us. It's been a week or two since we were able to bring a show to you. We were kind of taking a little bit of a hiatus at the end of the semester, trying to get our bearings, but we're going to start back up for a bunch of different shows this summer, and I'm so excited to have this show today. I've been wanting to talk to this gentleman. I've known him for the number of years we've known each other is going to sound weird because we're both 29 years old. But I've known him all my life, and I like to bring in Dr. Marc Henshaw. And Marc, it's great to see you. We've known each other from our days at Brownsville Catholic, and you've done some amazing things. And I think this is a perfect opportunity, a perfect show to tell your amazing story.
Well, Gary, thanks for having me on. I mean, we went to kindergarten together, didn't we? Through 8th grade. I mean, we've known each other most of our lives.
Yeah, definitely. Kindergarten to 8th grade. And it was funny when one of my coworkers, Pam, we were talking about doing the social media for this, and she's like, "We need to find a picture." And I'm like, "I can find a picture." And I was almost going to dig out the old kindergarten or first grade picture, but like I said, it's great to talk to you, Marc, and you have an amazing story. And let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it because I know me and you could probably talk for 4 hours, then YouTube will shut us down, and there'll be an investigation to our bandwidth. So right off the top, if you want to tell everybody a little bit of your background, how you went from Brownsville Catholic to where world travel to where you're on off. So give us the condensed Dr. Marc Henshaw story.
Well, it's kind of a regular story. I went to CalU. I graduated in 1998. With a bachelor's degree in anthropology with an archaeology focus. To be honest with you, Gary, I never even wanted to be an archaeologist. It never crossed my mind while I was at CalU in the beginning, my first 2 years. I was a bit of a partier. My first major was oceanography and earth science. I was failing out of it miserably. I partied a lot. I drank a lot. I wanted to drop out. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I always wanted to go in the military, but I'd fallen out of a tree in high school and tore my ACL, and so that precluded me from doing that. So I was telling my mom, I'll always remember the conversation. I said, Mom, I'm just going to drop out. I can go work at a mill or factory or, work on a farm or something, and it would be more enjoyable than what I'm going through now, and I'd be able to make money and start a living. And she was like, Marc, just stay in one more semester. Take a bunch of free electives. Take what you want, stuff that interests you. Well, I took stuff like scuba and skin diving and lifeguard training and, stuff like that. And I came across a class called anthropology. I didn't know what it was. It had an ology at the end. And I said, well, that's the study of people. I'll give it a shot. What the heck? And so my first professor that I had for introduction to anthropology was Dr. John Nass, who's now retired. He's emeritus now, I believe. And I sat in on the first day, and he went through and talked about what archaeology was, what anthropology was. And I approached him at the end of the class, and I said, I want to change my major. And he said, what? This is the first class. And I said, no, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I said, I'll be your best student. And with that, I changed my major, and I ended up eventually, of course, graduating with a degree in anthropology from CalU. I got my master's degree in 2004 from Western Michigan University in anthropology, historical archaeology. And then I finally got my PhD in 2014 in a field of archaeology called industrial archaeology, which is the study of mines, workplaces, labor movements. I studied the steamboat industry in Brownsville. That was my research focus. I'm trying to currently turn my dissertation to a book about that. And so, my beginning was rather rough. In my first 2 years at CalU, my 1.8 grade point average. After I found what I wanted to do, it went up, of course, to 3.0, 3.5, stuff like that. But it was a real struggle in the beginning. If you're not into what you don't have a passion about something, it's very difficult to go on with it.
And it's amazing how just one class or one professor that you connect with can change the whole course of your life because, I mean, had you not taken that class, I mean, And I think a lot of students have that story. I know for me, I mean, I had classes in comm studies and theater, and there were times, and I don't think the story that you said of like wanting to quit and having like just everything heaped on you is unique. But the fact that there's one or two people that you connect with that can really change your life is amazing. And when we were talking off the air, it's very hard to be able to get a guest on this show that you can check off the boxes, has a PhD. Has traveled the world. Your passport probably has stamps on it all the way around, an IMDb movie database, credits and everything like that. So, like I said, it's just amazing how those one or two little connections with people and professors and the right people, and you'll get put in the right place and on your right path. So, after you found out what your path was going to be in archaeology, just explain to people if they don't know. I mean, everyone I know has heard the word archaeology. I know I cannot spell it. I had to spell check your graphic about 30 different times, and it might still be incorrect. But just explain for the people at home that may not know exactly what archaeology is. What do you do in the field of archaeology?
So most people are familiar with Indiana Jones. That is not archaeology, even though he calls himself an archaeologist. It's kind of funny. It's the study of the past, but specifically human past. So a lot of people get sort of confused. They say, well, you dig up dinosaurs or look at fossils. And that's really not true. We study anything that humans have made or are left behind by humans. So that includes pre-humans, Australopithecines 3-4 million years ago in Africa, all the way to the present, of course, as much of the present as we can get. For instance, archaeologists are interested in things that are at least 50 years old or older. We're interested in things that were made by people or events that happened because of people, right? So a natural disaster may not be something that we're necessarily interested in until we can put a context of having humans involved in it in some way. One of my favorite natural disasters as an archaeologist is the Madrid Earthquake in 1811, because it affected so many people, including Native Americans. It left surface features on the Mississippi River, and I got great accounts of the first steamboat voyage, a diary that happened at that time describing the event. So when you place everything into a context, it becomes archaeologically important. And so that's what I study. That's how I define archaeology.
Now, you mentioned that New Madrid earthquake, and I believe, didn't the Mississippi River, that was such a powerful earthquake that didn't in spots like actually reverse course or cut new channels?
It did. Yes, it reversed course. So in 1811, the first steamboat to go from Pittsburgh to New Orleans was launched. And they happened to be down there during the same time as the New Madrid earthquake, which was also a coincidence because you had a comet that was present. You had the largest squirrel migration at the same time going on in the South. And you had this giant mud geysers from the earthquake happening. Native Americans were jumping in the river. Villages were being burned. People thought it was the apocalypse. And it's interesting to read their diary about what was going on at that time. So, yeah, that's why it's fascinating to me. But archaeology encompasses a lot of things. I've done underwater archaeology. When I was at Cal U, I got an internship with East Carolina University, and we excavated a War of 1812 gunboat in the Patuxent River. I spent 5 weeks underwater, went through specialized dive training. I've done prehistoric archaeology all through the United States, through West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Arizona. And I've done historic archaeology, of course. And three of my big projects, were actually in Brownsville. I excavated 2 steamboat captains' houses in Brownsville. And my chapter, the SPA, that is Society of Pennsylvania Archaeology, in California, we discovered the remnants of the Vulcan Iron and Machine Works in Brownsville that patterned and cast the first cast iron bridge in the United States, which is in Brownsville. We did a big excavation down there. That was one of the first archaeological projects funded on Kickstarter.
Wow.
That we did. Yeah. I crowdsourced that one. That was probably the first archaeology project crowdsourced. And so we had a good time with that. It was a really interesting project.
And one of the things that, I mean, there's the science and the history aspect to it, what you do. But one of the cool things, I think, is whenever I see you post things or anything like this, it's the storytelling aspect. You're not just, saying, okay, we found a foundation here. We found some tools, or we found this or that. You're trying to tell the story of like what these people's lives were, and at the time, and how we got from that point to now.
That's right. If you can't tell the story, if you can't reconstruct that story, there's really no point doing any digging. If you can't somehow parse information out of it, I know I tell my students at Cal, especially, that you should be able to read these sites like a book. You should be able to read the soil, read the stratigraphy, the context like a book. So when you're excavating, your mind is constantly thinking about how does this artifact fit into a larger context. One of the biggest how do I want to say, one of the biggest things about interpretation is being able to take, say, a piece of pottery and understand how it got onto that site and why. What class of person owned that piece of pottery? Who manufactured it? How did it get here? If we're working on a farmstead in the backwoods of western Pennsylvania, how does a piece of edgeware, pearlware get back there? What does that mean when we find it there? So there's a lot of different questions we have to wrestle with as we're excavating. And always in the back of your mind, it's turning that, people brought this here for a reason. And what was that reason?
And especially, you said you did the projects in Brownsville, and this area is rich in history because, it's one of the earliest settlements in the United, when it became the United States. But even before then, like what's kind of the background? I know pretty much everybody in this area, in the area, knows that colonial times, but there was a huge prehistoric presence in this area as well.
Oh, absolutely. At one point there was a time you could stand on the shores of Monongahela River in Brownsville and not know what was on the other side of it or who was on the other side of it. And so that sort of imagery really, really sends chills through my body thinking about the unknown. And so we think about the Native Americans who lived in southwestern Pennsylvania that never came in contact with early settlers. They were gone. We don't know their names. We give them names like the Monongahela, Fort Ancient, Archaic, Middle Archaic peoples. But really, because they left no written record, we have no idea what they called themselves. The settlers, of course, who did come in, encountered Iroquois and Lenape and Shawnee. But they're really transplants. They were coming in from New York and from the South. The people who lived here originally for thousands of years were already gone by that point. And so to find their remains and their children really sort of begs the question, well, who were they? What were they doing? I like to think of it as sort of we're time travelers, right? I got nothing on Doctor Who, but I can definitely, empathize with the guy. And like for the virtual field school I'm digging back here, I dug a hole today, and that is a window into the past. A very small window, a 35-centimeter window. But no less, there's a story there somewhere, right? As an archaeologist, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that story.
Well, what is it like? Because we're thinking in my head, we've been around these areas 300-400 years, but what is it like thinking in terms of there were people here thousands of years ago, and how big of a level of time that was? How is it like dealing with that? Is that an adjustment? Do you have to like reprogram your brain to say, okay, now we're looking at 5,000 years ago. Here's what this means, or here's what was here 1,000 years ago. What does that mean?
It's pretty fascinating, Gary, when you say reprogram your brain, because I constantly think about time. I constantly think about how fast it passes. I constantly think about how things change so very quickly in a very small amount of time. I also notice things that don't change as quickly. And when you think back 1,000 years, that is a huge stretch of time to think about. I'm always comparing myself, my own age. Maybe that's just a middle-aged guy's problem, right? That you compare your own age with what's going on, and you realize it's just a speck of time that we get to analyze this stuff and think about it. But you rewire your brain. I look at my kids and how fast they're growing up and how fast 4 years passes. And I think about how time passed for the Native Americans. Time is not necessarily not just a physical construct that we have that we can measure. Time passes for people differently, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
definitely, it passes differently for me. I'm always late, constantly late. And it's because my time is passing much differently than other people's time, my internal clock. And to Native Americans, time was very much different as well. It passed at a different time, at a different pace than with Europeans, how they viewed time, or how they even viewed places for that matter. We think about large rocks in the landscape and trees. And for us, they're just natural occurrences. But to them, that was their backyard. These places had names. They had power. They were imbued with special powers and special places. And so you even have to think about that. How were these landscapes formed? What did it mean to them? That's anthropology, right? That's anthropology. And what I tell my students is, what I love about anthropology is that I'm an anthropologist first and an archaeologist second. All the questions I can ask a living person, I can ask the same exact questions of a dead person, a person in the past. I might not get the same answers. I might not get those answers as easily. Questions like, where did you live? What did you do in your life? What was your class status? Mm-hmm. These are things that I can ask you right now. I can interview you right now. And it's the same thing I could ask a burial, a Native American burial, an artifact. What was your purpose? Mm-hmm. And so that's why I love anthropology. It studies all ranges of time. All ranges of time.
I remember probably a few months ago, I was flipping through and there was an episode of The Cosmos on, and they explained it in a similar way you did. But for me, whenever I saw that description and that, like, the graphical thing that they did, I'm like, we've only been here for a split second. We haven't been here at all. I mean, it's just
not even a blink of the eye. Not even a blink of the eye.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've had very little time to do very little. Imagine if we were here another 100,000 years. And that's another aspect of anthropology. There are futurists. There are people who look at our evolution into the future and what's going on. The loss of our wisdom teeth, for instance. People are being born without them now, and it's because we don't need them. We're not eating the hard material that we were eating before. We're not having to grind our food as much. And so they're becoming vestigial organ. Where are we transforming? How are we evolving now into the future to deal with our new environment that we're creating?
Well, I might have to change your graphic here to say time traveler, because I think that's probably the best thing. I hadn't even thought about that before. But moving on a little bit from that, let's talk a little bit about some of the amazing things you've done, because, I mean, you've really checked off a lot of boxes of your life. So let's talk a little bit about your time on a couple shows on the Nat Geo channel.
Sure.
Just talk about the process. How did you get on there? What was the show, and what did you do? Because let me tell you, the first time I'm flipping through the channels, I'm like, wait a second, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and I texted everybody I knew. I think I probably messaged you on Facebook and stuff, but just talk a little bit about that experience, because that is unbelievable.
It was an amazing experience. So I write a blog. I don't want to plug it too much because I haven't written in a while, but I have a blog called archaeologydude.com. And a couple shows had come out around 2014 after I got my PhD that were dealing with pseudo archaeology, basically looting sites, putting price tags on artifacts they found, and just completely destroying sites for money. And so I wrote a couple scathing blog pieces, and they were read by the right people. And I got a phone call, and it was from the company that was doing the consulting for the show, that they wanted someone who was a little more critical, that would hold the production company's feet to the fire. And this show is called Diggers, about two metal detectorists. And so we had formed relationships with the Society for Historical Archaeology, which is now global, and the Society for American Archaeology. And we came up with a set of standards and rules. And so I was placed on the show to be sort of the rule keeper for making sure that their techniques were within the boundaries of doing good archaeology. And so we did good archaeology on Diggers. Everything was cataloged. No fines were placed. Everything was found in the field. I recorded everything. We had a whole team. I worked for Michael Baker International out of Pittsburgh. We had a whole team of people that analyze the artifacts from me taking pictures of it, if I was in New Orleans or wherever, and us trying to figure out what the stuff was context wise. And I spent a whole season doing that. I was their on-screen archaeologist for, I don't know, 20 some episodes of their final season. And I worked with two amazing people who were on there, KG and Ringy, as they're called on the show. Extremely passionate about history and artifacts. And so is the metal detectors community. They're very passionate. They're just as passionate as archaeologists. And we were trying to bring everybody into the fold because archaeology and metal detecting has had a pretty rough existence. And I think that show really brought us together to say, hey, look, we can do it responsibly. If you're going to take your kid out and do metal detecting, hey, why not record the site? Why not record the artifacts you found and give the report to the state? You don't have to give the artifacts. Just tell us what's there. Because really what's going to happen is at some point somebody's going to build something out there, and we're going to have to know the archaeology that's there. So, hey, why not give them a little heads up first, Help everybody out. And I wish the show would have went on a little longer, not just for me being on there, but because we were doing good things. Really educating the public about history and the importance of context. And, you find something in your backyard, what is it? People call me up to this day asking me what they've got, who watch the show and are interested in it.
Well, you hit on something right there when you said, because a lot of times, I think for me, I'm sure the artifacts and everything you find is amazing, but just knowing that story and the history of the site is probably worth more than, you can't put a monetary value on the history and the story. What were some of the more interesting and amazing things on that when you were on that show? Did you guys discover or come across?
One of the most interesting things to me was we worked on a site in Mississippi, which was a World War II POW camp. But it wasn't for American POWs, it was for German POWs. And it was cool to go through, and we found a whole bunch of documentary evidence. Nobody even knew that this place was in their backyard. But in the 40s, we had imported a bunch of German Africa Corps POWs to the backwoods of Mississippi. And I don't want to say that the POW camp was posh, but if you were an officer in the German army, you got to keep your adjuncts. They got their own separate quarters that their adjuncts could stay in. They could still write letters. We got some really eerie photos of U.S. U.S. honor guard burying a deceased German soldier with the full German swastika flag and everything. It was truly a bizarre and interesting part of our history. We uncovered that some of these POWs would escape at night, go into town, and go see movies dressed in their full, Nazi uniforms. They became a regular sight in this town in Mississippi. Several of the guys repaired clocks for the locals. It was just, it was bizarre. It was bizarre, but it was fascinating. And that was a really interesting show. We did a Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid show out in Wyoming where we went to Hole in the Wall and went to where Butch Cassidy had a few gun battles. And every episode was fascinating. Every episode told an interesting story. Out in Wyoming, when we were out there, we were at this ranch. It was so big. It was 100 miles by 100 miles. And we were looking at an area in this sort of rock outcropping where a mountain lion had pulled an entire cow into a crevasse to eat it. But right there were some very old buttons, a few old knife blades, and here was a fur trader's camp, possibly some of the earliest fur trading material out there that we have found. And so that was fascinating. But yeah, we went to dozens of sites, dozens.
Now, when you're out in the field like that, do you ever get that like the hair on your arm going up, like you can kind of feel yourself walking in these people's footsteps? Can you kind of envision? Can you kind of put yourself when you're on the site into there to kind of help bring that story to life, at least to yourself?
That's absolutely what happens. Okay, and people think you're crazy. Okay, like you feel in art, you touch something that somebody hasn't touched since either they made it or they lost it, right? And so you get this sort of connection with the history. You feel it for a minute. I knew this old archaeologist. He was in his 90s. And I was fresh out of undergrad working for the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission as a field archaeologist. And we were out doing an underwater project at Sheeprock Rock Shelter in Raystown Lake. We're on this boat. And this old guy's telling me that every time he touched an artifact, it felt like lightning going through his fingertips. And he was instantly transported back to that time period. And his name was Paul Heberling. And I said, Paul, I understand that. I feel the same thing. I feel a real connection. It sounds crazy, but there is this energy that you feel with touching something of such historical value. And it doesn't matter if it's a piece of pottery, a cup, that's from 1950, I find in a trash pit while I'm excavating. You still get that buzz, that, man, this has some history to it. There's weight here. That's what I want to say. There's weight.
That's unbelievable. Like I said, that's got to feel so amazing whenever you're out there. And like I said, even if it's just a small find, just to be able to tell that story. Now, moving on, I know in the last couple of years you've done something amazing. You've been overseas doing some amazing work. Could you explain? Because I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll let you explain what you were doing and how you were doing it, because some of those posts that I would see you do from overseas was my mouth would be open, my eyes would be open, and I was just like, cool. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's probably been the most life-changing experience I've ever had, besides having kids. I've been honored to be a part of a contractor for the Defense POW MIA accounting agency. I work for a company called S&A International, who they contract with DPAA to provide archaeologists, we're called scientific recovery experts, to go overseas to Southeast Asia, to the Pacific, and attempt to recover our missing war dead. And that can cover anywhere from World War II all the way to the present. We've got basically 88,000 missing in action right now who are still out there somewhere. And so our goal and the goal of the United States government is to recover 100% of those individuals. Now that's a large undertaking. And so we work with the U.S. military, all branches, to go on missions. They run roughly 54 missions a year. Crews can be as many as, so we're broken into recovery teams. There can be 4 to 6 recovery teams, each with 25 people on board. A standard mission, I'll get a call. I'll head to Hawaii to Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam Airfield. That's where DPA headquarters is. I'll get briefed. I'll get a packet of material. I'll meet up with my team. I'm the only civilian on my team when we go. Everyone else is military. We'll fly military transport over, so I get to ride on a cool C-17, sleep on the floor, put a hammock up. And a lot of times our mission starts in Pattaya, Thailand. We'll get a night there to sort of decompress, and then take a bus to Laos. That's where my first mission was. I camped on the Ho Chi Minh Trail for a month and a half.
Wow.
Made it through 3 typhoons, the monsoon, and a ton of unexploded ordnance out there. We've got several specialists. Myself, I'm the only archaeologist. So I've got to teach these guys how to do archaeology in the field. Then we have a team leader. There's usually a captain and above, a commissioned officer. We've got a team sergeant. He's in charge of the crew members. And then we have a combat photographer, usually a medic or 2, a couple EOD or unexploded ordnance, or they're basically unexploded ordnance specialists. Let me think. We have a life support specialist if our mission calls for it. And that person, he's got a really cool job. He's in charge of knowing everything a pilot would have on in the specific aircraft we're looking for.
Wow.
So let's say we're looking for an F4 Phantom, F4D specifically. He would know what every part of the ejection seat looks like, the field kit, flight suit, the oxygen mask, helmet, visor, communications. He'll be able to tell you if you find a piece of paracord, where exactly that paracord came from. If you find a buckle, a snap, he'll say left pocket, right pocket. I mean, he knows exactly what that pilot was wearing. And that's important because a lot of these planes had multiple individuals on them. So like the F4 had a pilot and a weapons officer. So let's say we're out there and we find 18 rings of an oxygen mask and a boot, and then we're not finding anything else, but we know it was a two-person aircraft. We can only place one person on that plane at that point. Okay. And so we have to begin wondering what happened to the other individual. Did he eject? Is he gone? Did he make it and run somewhere and then get captured? And so we have to know what we call the minimum number of individuals. That's with any forensic case. You know how many people are on that plane and how many people you've got here in the remains section. And so I've been on 4 missions. I've been to Laos twice. I've been to the frontier of Vietnam, and I've been to Vietnam twice. And so 2 of my missions were base camping, they call it. So the locals, I'll have myself, my crew of maybe 25 individuals, and then we employ hundreds of locals to help excavate, move dirt. They build all of our infrastructure, our camp, and then we eat whatever the locals eat. So we've had some pretty strange stuff in the field. I eat a lot of bugs by choice now when I'm in the field. They're actually pretty good. Eat a lot of silkworm in Vietnam because one of the things you find out in Southeast Asia, at least in Vietnam, is that their food isn't very spicy. What they'll do is they'll have meat prepared 3 ways, like beef or chicken or pork. It'll be either a soup. Well, there will be soup, a fried or boiled dish. And then you have a bowl of garlic and a bowl of hot peppers. And you take a bite of the food and take a bite of each of those to get your spice. And after 30 days of doing that, you want something a little bit different. So my first mission to Laos, the medic, he was a captain, Captain Mitchum. We're helping the kitchen ladies catch bugs at night. You'd see them out there with their little lanterns, and the bugs out there, they're pretty big. There's no real predators. The locals have eaten all the birds. So we were helping put them in, capture these things. And after about a week, I said to the captain, I said, hey, man, we got to eat things now. We've been out here, toiling with them. Let's go have a meal with them. So we grabbed our combat photographer, who's fresh out of boot camp in the Marines. Said, come on, man, let's document this. And we all ate it. We all ate cicadas and June bugs and katydids, and my Marine buddy didn't like it too much, but I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. So after eating a bland food after a while, they got silkworms or katydids or something like that. Sure, fry me up some of that. I'll take that.
So what you're saying is if someone in the Michigan area sees a restaurant called Henshaw's, look at the menu really carefully to make sure you know what you're eating then.
That's right. It could be an entomologist's dream.
Now, on these missions, first of all, I didn't realize the scale of just the amount of people that are going out. And that's amazing that, the government and the U.S. military are dedicated to bringing all of our heroes home to rest. Now, what are some of the more profound experiences with hopefully finding POWs or any of those stories that you have had over there? Well, I mean,
if you want to talk about anthropology and archaeology, this is the purest form you could probably get. I mean, you have local. I forgot to mention, I've got a linguist on my crew who speaks the local language, and so you tell him something, and then he has to speak to their person in charge to get things motivated and moving along. And you become friends with the locals. I have many friends on WhatsApp from Vietnam or on my Facebook page that, thank goodness for Google Translate, we can actually have a conversation, right? And so here you have, I mean, I stand on these sites and I'll see a bucket line of 100 people going into a screening station. And the locals will pull down fronds of palm trees to make shades for themselves. And they're wearing rice hats and traditional clothing. Some of them don't even speak the local. The locals speak a different language than their countrymen. I mean, Laos, we encountered a language that the closest thing I can consider is almost German Lao. It's very guttural. And so I researched it, and it's actually a language spoken when the Khmer Empire was in rule about 900 AD.
Wow.
And these people are actually splinter groups of that empire, the Ma Kung, and they speak a very different language. And so even the Lao can't understand them. You have the Hmong there, and the Hmong speak their own language. And you ask them, and they say, "We're not Vietnamese, we're Hmong," and they wear a very traditional set of garbs. And so, the archaeology of finding someone is in recovering an individual is, of course, the pinnacle. That's the mission. But alongside that is this incredible sort of drenching oneself in a culture, immersing. I mean, to go and eat in someone's house they've invited you, or to be named a chief, associate chief of a group, is one of the highest honors I think I could ever have. And it's almost spiritual. And we do, and look, there are some spiritual things involved. We run a med cap, okay, because we're in the jungle, right? And so there's not a lot of medicine for these people. A lot of times our medics are more well-equipped than the hospital is in your local area, if there even is one. Mm-hmm. So we have the locals come in and they can get medicines for ailments and be diagnosed and told if they need to go to a city to get treatment. And we had this girl, she had a sinus infection. And doc prescribed her some sinus meds, but anyhow, she didn't come back to work. And one of the Lao officials came up to me and he said, "Dr. Henshaw, the Lao are very spiritual. They believe that spirits habitate the site, and they've made her sick. Would you mind if a shaman came up here and allowed a pig to root around all day and then sacrificed it?" Hell no, bring him up. As a matter of fact, some of our guys weren't feeling too good, so maybe it'll make them feel better too. That's what I told the guy.
Yeah, I think anytime that question's asked, you got to say yes. I think in any situation, you got to say yes.
And so they let this pig root around my site. And about midday, myself and the team leader were standing there. We saw the smoke rising from the northern part of this site. And so we went over there, and they had slaughtered this pig. And the shaman was doing his rites. He was blind. And so he was sitting there doing his rites. And that evening, they invited all of us to have a drink and expel the spirits. And for a brief moment, you're transported back in time. For a brief moment, you understand that people view the world very differently. Their world is very different. And what's interesting, too, is the fact that on this site, it had been heavily shelled. We bombed the crap out of this thing. There was unexploded ordnance. We found had more than a few scares of someone chopping a anti-personnel mine in half right beside me.
Oh, geez.
You hear that tink, and you're like, "What the heck?" And you look down, and you're like, "Oh, Doc, I think I hit something here." Get the EOD guys over, and they just run and evacuate the site. But we found a prehistoric site. I identified a prehistoric site on the hillside of this project area we're in Laos. And there were some bronze jewelry fragments and flaking debris from them making stone tools. And so I presented it to the Lao official. He didn't quite know what to do with it. And I said, "Well, these are from these people's past. They have lived here for thousands of years. Their ancestors made these tools." And he said, "Dr. Henshaw, I only have one archaeologist in the country.
Wow.
You take them back." And so I took him back. And then on my next mission, I brought him back with me, and I gave him to a different official. But our view of the past is very different, right? We have a different connection to it here because we study it. But for the Ma Kung and the people who live out there, they've always lived there. Their past and their present are the same exact thing, right? They haven't really changed much.
Well, that's amazing that, that you're able to get those experiences, because truly makes the world smaller, and the more people that can understand what everybody's going through, it's going to make the world a better place. I mean,
Well, sure.
Unbelievable.
Hey, 50 years ago, we were shooting at these people, and they were shooting at us. And so then you get these perspectives when you're walking in these valleys and these rice paddies, just what our guys were going through too. How confused they probably were and scared, because I've seen people in rice paddies pop up out of nowhere where the women were gathering rice and they were right there in front of you. And, so you get a perspective of what our GIs were going through too. And then you get the perspective of what the hell were we doing there? What were we going to do with this real estate we were going to get if we won? And make no mistake, the people of Laos and Vietnam love us. Okay, they listen to our music. One of the wildest things is the Christmas music. They play Christmas music all the time. It's like listening to pop music. You'll hear one of the things that I listened to was Shakira with Jingle Bells playing in the background. They had remixed it. You're sitting in a pizza place, and Southeast Asia pizza is an interesting construct. I'm to leave the mayonnaise off, but you're hearing Shakira with Jingle Bells playing behind it while you're eating pizza. I mean, they're very friendly. They're communist, of course, both regimes, and they really want to help us, and we really want to help them too. Because by us doing this, we're bringing economy to these regions. We spent a lot of money there. And so you'll see they'll even build hotels because we've gone back to sites for decades. Okay. We go back to sites for decades there. If there is an artifact there, we will not stop until we've excavated 100% of a site.
That's incredible. I mean, that's just, like I said, it's just mind-blowing, the experiences that you had. And I'm sure these experiences over there, let's transition to another part of your multifaceted career. You're an educator too. So you're not just in the classroom. You're out there learning the cutting edge, doing the thing you're teaching. And I know I have a student of mine. She's in the radio station, Caroline Jeffries.
Yeah, Caroline Jeffries.
And if you want to give her a project right now, I'll make sure that she gets the link, because she's probably doing homework right now, the homework you gave her. But you were telling me whenever we were talking the other day planning for the show that you're getting to really do something groundbreaking here at Cal U in the field of archaeology and education in this new world. Yeah,
we're pioneering a virtual field school right now. When this quarantine hit, or I should say when the pandemic hit and the quarantine followed, we're really kind of stuck because we have graduating seniors who need the field school to graduate. And of course, field school is social. We need workers in the field. We need to dig sites. They need to be somewhat close together. It just wasn't going to work that way during the pandemic, because we have a great site. We have a site up on Route 40, Gary. I don't know if you're familiar with the Green Tree Tavern.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. The Abel Colley Tavern.
Yeah.
Which is where the Historical Society is. Across the street was Abel Colley's first tavern, the Green Tree Tavern. We're excavating that. And so we were just going to go there, and our SPA folks were going to help out. But now we've entered social distancing and quarantine. We had to figure out something else. And even doing a Google search of virtual field schools come up with nothing. You get sort of video game-like virtual field schools, but that wasn't going to really cut it with our students because they need the hands-on experience. So myself and Dr. Kuba, Casey Kuba, we were left with a real conundrum. So I planned out sort of what I call an archaeology cooking show. All right. I'm going to demonstrate how to cook this archaeological site, and you at home are going to prepare the same thing. And that's the model. So I'll dig in my backyard. I have this very laptop I'm on now. I'm in my garage because I had class today. I take it outside. We have a lecture section where I give notes and presentation on what we're going to talk about. Today's topic was setting datums and reading USGS 7.5 minute maps, and phase 1 of archaeological field testing, which involves digging a shovel test. And so I demonstrated how to dig a shovel test in my backyard where I'm going to excavate. And the students will then go on and do the same thing in their backyard. They'll take photographs of it, photographs of their notes. They can video it, I have very specific digital information they need to send me. And then next week, we're going to start digging a larger unit. And so we're going to continue doing that until we get to the end, right? Until we can talk about stratigraphy and context. So nothing like this has ever been done. This is completely new. I am eternally grateful for CalU for letting us do this, attempt this this sort of witchcraft in archaeology that's never been done. And if I may plug one thing, and I will plug the anthropology department. Never have I seen, even though there's only two of us, and I'm only a part-time, I'm only a temporary instructor, but between myself and Dr. Kuba, we still work in the field. We're not people who did this and don't do it any longer. We're not people who have sat on our laurels and no longer go in the field and pursue it and just talk about it. Both of us are very active in the field. She is very active. She still consults. I still do some consulting on the side. I had my own consulting firm out of my home in Pennsylvania for a very long time, Nemacolin Archaeological Services. And we did all sorts of projects all over Pennsylvania. And I still get calls to do stuff. And so we are active, and we are very much a part of the cutting edge of archaeology and anthropology. Her more so in the forensics than even I am. And I can say that's one of the biggest pluses to CalU's program in anthropology is the fact that you've got people who still do it and are still very active doing it.
Oh, still active doing it. Like I said, just in the short time we've talked today, I mean, you've told, about a half a dozen stories that, I'm pumped to start reading more about, history and stuff like that. And the fact that the passion that you bring to it, I mean, and that translates into the classroom, because I know the couple of students that we've had through here that have had you in the class just have, glowing reviews of you saying, you're passionate, what's going on. And, yeah, I think they might, they're good students. They weren't trying to see if I could get them a better grade, but that's just one of the things that's great here about CalU is that, people like you that are out there doing the job that you're teaching and are the cutting edge. And like you said, this has never been done before. And, the way the world and the pandemic and the quarantines and social distancing and everything, you basically had to think on your feet and come up with this. And this is only going to benefit the students.
And hopefully it creates a model. Maybe other universities can use this. Maybe if we never have to use it again, we can dust it off and do it again. I think pandemics are going to be with us for a while. Archaeology is forever changed at this point, as long as there's social distancing involved. So why not adapt, right? Mm-hmm. We study evolution, so this is just an evolution. We have the technology, let's use it, right? And that's what we're really getting at. Adapt. We have to adapt. We have to be adaptable.
When I say, I know that's the key word for everybody, adapting and trying to move on. And Mark, we're running out of time here because I'm sure you got to have some homework to do. And I know you have a couple little ones up there. I know we were talking a little bit off screen. If you want to talk a little about your family, I know you're awfully proud of them up there. You got some, because I know you haven't slept since you have a newborn.
I do have a newborn. Well, she's not quite newborn now. She's 4 months old, Marceline. And I got a 3.5-year-old, Cecilia. And Cecilia's my little monkey wrench. One of my hobbies is motorcycles. Sitting beside me, I've got a
let's see this.
I've got a classic 1969 BSA, which is a British bike, Birmingham Small Arm, which I restored from the ground up. And I got my Kawasaki Vulcan sitting behind me.
That's a good one to have.
Just like an Indian, looks like an Indian. But she helps me in the garage. We do all sorts of little projects. She's going to help us dig out here too. She's really excited to get a little trowel in and start digging. And actually, one of the exciting things is I actually found something today in my backyard.
Oh, what'd you find?
I found a little refuse pit. So I'm in Allen Park, Michigan, which is by Detroit. And the back part of my yard was an alleyway at one time. But from what I can tell, I've got some great embossed bottles back there, bottle fragments. Looks like some slag from like a coal stove. So I'm pretty excited. And others of our virtual field school folks are finding stuff too. So, Man, we might have all kind of good stuff this season. Hope maybe we can do a follow-up and I can talk about all the stuff we found. We'll figure it out.
We can have you on as much as you want because we could talk about the follow-up. We can talk about if you want to do a motorcycle show, we can definitely because that's another.
Let's talk motorcycles.
We'll send you up a little GoPro and to get you on a little bit of a ride out there. But that just shows once again that the stories are all around. Who knows if if you're in the backyard, I'd still take walks, and every once in a while if I see a rock that's a different shape, I'm like, I wonder if that's a rock, or I wonder if that's an old something else. So if anybody at home that's watching this has any questions or wants to know a little bit more information, what places online can you plug them, or if they want to get in touch with you or anything like that?
We can read my blog at www.archaeologydude.com. You can email me, henshaw@calu.edu. I am everywhere on the net. Google my name. You'd be surprised what comes up. I will take any question, take a photograph of something, email it to me. I'll tell you what it is. Don't get your feelings hurt if it's just a natural piece of rock, though. I do have to preface that, if you've got that rock that Grandpappy found 30 years ago and it fits in the palm of your hand and you want to know the truth about it, well, then hit me up. If you want to hear what you want to hear, just keep it to yourself.
All right, I'll sift through my rock collection a little bit more thoroughly. I won't show you pictures of all of them, so we'll cut them down. But real quickly before we go, we touched a little bit at the beginning conversation, some of the stuff you're doing in Brownsville. Are you looking, hopefully once this is all, when in the past we can kind of get back to normal, are you looking to do any more digs or anything in the area? And if so, what would some of those places be?
The ex-mayor of Brownsville, Norma Ryan, who I'm sure you're familiar with, one time she said to me, she's like, why can't Brownsville be like Williamsburg? We have a rich history there. We've got the oldest market district west of the Appalachian Mountains in the United States. We were a huge boat building center for the longest time. Not only steamboats, flatboats, keel boats. I mean, immigrants from the thousands came through Brownsville. We've got accounts of 10,000 immigrants on Old Route 40 waiting for their boats to be built during the wintertime. So there's plenty of places. I would love to get back to the Foundry. The Foundry was a huge site. It was built in the 1814s, 1815s by a man named John Snowden. We have one of his engines. For those of you who are familiar with the Steamboat Arabia Museum in Missouri, they found an actual steamboat that was built in Brownsville, the Arabia. It has all the machinery that was built in Brownsville, the only John Snowden Sons engine in existence that we know about, and just filled with millions of artifacts. And it's fascinating. Brownsville sort of forgot its heritage, but yet you go to Missouri and all they hear about is Brownsville.
And wasn't the Arabia, wasn't that one of the ones that when it was found, it wasn't actually found in the riverbed, it was found off after the channel or something changed?
That's right. It was found in a cornfield, several hundred meters from the Mississippi River. But, Mark Twain even mentioned that the Mississippi River could change its course in a matter of a day. And so that would not be unheard of. There are many boats that are right now would be terrestrial excavations as opposed to underwater excavations. Yeah. So I'd like to hit the Foundry back up. That would be my big thing. I'd like to maybe look at some more of these taverns. There was a whole network of taverns on Route 40. What was their relationship with the town? Who went there? Those are things that I'm personally interested in.
Well, I tell you what, I can't wait to hear and see what else you do. And like I said, we're definitely going to have you on a few more times. Anytime you want to come on, just shoot me a message and we'll chat like this. But I think for this one, we're going to have to call it because we're going to try and make this onto a DVD and get it on for the weekend, and it'll be on YouTube. So you can send it out and everyone can send it out. But Mark, it's been great chatting with you, and we'll see you on
it's been great chatting with you.
And don't hang up too quickly. We'll chat for a minute or two after I stop the feed. But for Dr. Henshaw, I'm